Chapter 11. Children who are deaf or hard of hearing. Historically, there has been a debate over how to teach communication skills, and the debate is whether the children should be taught to speak or to communicate with gestures. In the United States, Gallaudet said gestures. In 1817, Gallaudet created the first deaf school, and in 1884, the college, whereas Alexander Graham Bell, yes, the one that created the telephone, felt that we should use the speaking technique. He created a school of vocal physiology in 1872. In Europe in the 1880s, there was the same debate going on, the focus of speech in Germany and the focus on gestures in France. Today we tend to use, or more recently, we tend to use a term called total communication method. And this was coined in the 1970s by Holcomb, who had severe hearing loss himself. And what it does is combine the use of American Sign Language, or ASL, with oral speech. And the focus is on what the child can master of both. Currently, the emphasized educational approach and culture prefers people speak. So another important aspect of this arena is cochlear implants, and this is something that over the last 15 years has become more advanced and more accepted. This is a surgically implanted electronic device that provides a sense of sound to a person who's profoundly deaf or severely hard of hearing. It was first used in Paris in 1976 and was approved in the United States in 1984. In the United States, currently 58,000 adults and 38,000 have had the surgery. There must be 58,000 adults who are hearing impaired and 38,000 have had the surgery. Sorry. So let's do some definitions of deafness and hard of hearing. So you can find these definitions on page 355. So degree of loss is an important component, and this is determined by sound loss in decibels. 16 to 25 decibels would be slight. Deafness, loss greater than 91 decibels. And then with deafness, an individual cannot process linguistic or language information through hearing, even with the help of hearing aids or amplification. Age of onset also makes a difference in defining deafness or hard of hearing. There is congenital, which is present at birth, acquired, which happens during childhood or adulthood, pre-linguistics, which occurs before language has developed, and post-linguistic, where the child or individual has developed some speech and then language has occurred before they lose their hearing. Type of loss, structural or functional. Conductive loss means that something blocks the processing through the outer or inner ear, and this could be simply wax, or it could be caused by an infection or some sort of malfunction in the structures involved with hearing. This is usually temporary, and it can often be corrected by surgery or medicine. Sensory neural loss is damage to the inner ear or auditory nerve. and this can be assisted with a hearing aid or cochlear implant. You can also have a mixture of both. This is problems with both the outer and inner ear. And again, hearing aids or cochlear implants can facilitate and accommodate for that. It could also be a central auditory processing disorder, which has to do with the auditory nerve that connects the hearing structures to the brain, and this limits the ability to utilize auditory information because the brain is not processing it correctly. Here you have a depiction of the anatomy of the ear, and you can see the inner and outer ear. You can see the structures on the outside of the ear, the bone, and then you have enlargement of the inner ear where you can see the small bones that really assist with hearing, and you also see the cochlea. So causes of hearing loss include genetics. This hearing loss can be inherited from one or both parents, and there are nearly 600 syndromes and 125 genes associated with hearing. And it can be present at birth or develop later. 30 to 40% of children with hearing loss have other associated disabilities as well. Hearing loss can also be caused by environment. It could be caused by an illness and an infection, such as middle ear infections. It could be as a result of maternal infections causing hearing loss in fetal development. And one of those occurrences, or one of the ways we summarize this, is with the acronym TORCHES, which could be toxoplasmosis, which is a parasite found in cat feces. And so a pregnant woman should never change a cat litter or scoop cat litter. Rubella is another that can cause hearing loss in fetal development. Cytomegalovirus, which is a uterine infection. And then herpes simplex virus also can cause neurological problems. And then lastly, trauma or injury can cause hearing loss, environmental hearing loss. So assessing hearing loss in children, one of the most important things that we've been doing in the last 30 years is screening infants soon after birth, and there are different ways we can do this. We can use an OAE, and this is a microphone in the ear to test if there is an echo indicating hearing. We could use ARB. This is electrodes that record brain activity from headphone sound. And then ASSR, which is response to varying frequencies. We can also, for children under 3, we can use a bone conductor test, which bypasses the ear using bone and brain indicators. And then we can also do a play-focused auditory test using toys to elicit response to blinking, hear rates, and respiration. Children 3 and up, we can use pure tone audiometry, which is tones, not speech, through headphones with a range of sounds and frequencies, and an audiogram, which is produced. This determines range and degree of loss. So your book has several profiles of children who are deaf or hard of hearing, Keisha, Carlos, and Raymond, and you can find their stories beginning on page 353. So take a look at those different examples. About 12% of the U.S. population has some degree of hearing loss. That includes 3 million children under the age of 18. Because profound hearing loss is a low-incidence disability, many schools have difficulty providing students with needed supports. So when we talk about cognitive and academic development, the most critical focus is if the deafness and hearing loss is present in infancy and early childhood. Early intervention is critical because this is the critical period of language development. Children with hearing loss can be of average intelligence. They could be gifted or have other disabilities that cause cognitive delay. Intelligence tests are designed for hearing children, and it can be difficult to accurately assess the intelligence level of a child with hearing loss, and many of these tests do not adequately capture children's strengths who have hearing loss. Children with hearing losses have profound challenges in learning to read because they cannot rely on phonetic awareness because there is no ability to discriminate between sounds. They are required to do intensive vocabulary work. A whole word approach or sight word approach needs to be used, and explicit instruction in sentence structure can be a very effective approach. Infants with hearing loss will still cry, coo, and babble because remember these are reflexive, and so they're present in all children from birth to about 6 months. As their peers begin speaking, children with hearing loss will begin using gestures instead because they're not being reinforced once speech becomes a learned behavior. They don't hear. If they're not taught a sign system, they develop their own home sign. So they'll come up with their own gestures to communicate. Communication problems associated with hearing loss can become social problems. So we need to, in the intervention process, we need to provide family support, and professional and educational supports are really important. Mastering a type of communication system, whether it's oral or sign language, is really critical. So when we talk about deaf culture, we're really talking about approaches that are used by the deaf community, and it has its own language, which in the United States is American Sign Language, ASL, and it has its own cultural norms. Many individuals who are deaf are bilingual. They are fluent in both ASL and English for writing and reading, and many use code switching to move between languages. Some specialists advocate for teaching ASL as a first language and English as a second language. So some structures and supports. Children with hearing loss should be frequently assessed as their needs change over time. And a multidisciplinary team should include many professions, including audiologists, speech and language pathologists, and parents, must meet to construct the IEP. The RTI method is important as many children with hearing loss spend much of their day in the general education classroom. So at Tier 1, they need to have more hands-on activities. Tier 2, small group reading skill instruction. And then for Tier 3, instruction in the use of hearing aids or ASL. So for curriculum and instruction, of course, a vital part of that process is assistive technology. It's critical for improving communication. So the use of hearing aids, cochlear implants, or other types of alerting systems to communication. In regards to family and lifespan issues, families play a key role in helping the child with hearing loss to develop successful communication skills. Transitions to adulthood must begin in high school. Many students who are hard of hearing will go on to success in the workplace and or post-secondary education.